Welcome back to the Warehouse Podcast. I'm Tyler.
I'm Jesse.
And I'm Eli.
And guys, we got an episode ahead of us. Some things happened. I don't know. There's no banter this week. Just get right into what everybody came here for. Pat Valleca hit a home run this week. Thoughts?
I mean, it was amazing. It was really remarkable.
Patty B.
Patty, he did do
what
it.
We came here for.
No. What everybody wants to talk about. It's momentous, historic. First time in any of our lifetimes that it's happened. The Orioles have a no-hitter. John Means, the ace of all aces, he did it. And where were you when it happened, Eli? I'm sure you were strapped in. You were gonna, 9 innings of this beautiful pitching. You're a former pitcher yourself. Where were you in this moment?
I was absolutely locked into the back of my eyelids.
Oh my God.
Yeah. So I worked from 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. the night before. And then I had to stay up for a couple hours to get my second dose of the COVID vaccine. And then I got home, ate some food, and about 1, 2 o'clock, I went to bed. And I missed everything. It was just
excuses.
Indefensible. My duties as an Orioles fan were neglected this day. I have nothing to say.
Yeah, it's inexcusable. Jesse, what do you want to add?
Well, yeah, I was in class, but I did see the 9th inning. So, and at the beginning of the game, I was following it on Game Track, and then very early in the game, I turned it off to focus more on class. Then after I got finished class, I saw your text and ran down to turn on the game. So
would you have turned it on if I hadn't texted you guys that something was happening?
Probably not. I was in a different headspace at that point, coming out of class, so. It
is very Orioles for something so momentous to happen during a day game in the middle of the week that probably didn't have a huge TV audience for the most
Wednesday
part.
Afternoon, of course, yeah.
on the West Coast.
Right.
Unreal.
The Mariner fans got to see something special. So the few that were in attendance.
John Means did say the fans were kind of giving him some juice and stuff. So that's pretty cool. And it is nice that it happened in a year with fans back in the stands versus, last year where it would have been silence pretty much. It's a bummer it wasn't at Camden Yards, but it's still cool that it happened because the Orioles got no hit at Camden Yards at Safeco a couple years ago or whatever the hell it's called, T-Mobile Park. A couple.
Safeco was a really great name. And then T-Mobile Park just doesn't do it for me. I just had to throw that out there.
Is it just a great name, though, because that was the name of your childhood? Because it's still a brand, right?
Yeah, but I still think it sounds good. I don't know. It sounds better than T-Mobile Park.
But not as good as Camden Yards. So.
Not as good as Camden Yards. Definitely better than U.S. Guaranteed Rate Field, though.
That's the worst one. And the Lone Depot Marlins Park is awful, too. Okay. Well, let's get into the Means start a little bit because even though we didn't all get to watch every pitch, I was working when it happened. I did have it up on my phone while I was doing stuff on the computer, so I watched most of it, but didn't get to see every single pitch. Now that we've had some time to kind of go back, maybe analyze a little bit what happened, do we just have any sort of general thoughts on how Means achieved this feat? Did you expect this to happen? Eli, I don't know, you're as the former pitcher on staff, sort of what's your reaction to John Means throwing this monumentous no-hitter?
I think it's really, it just shows the evolution of him as a pitcher. He's never, prior to the start, gone more than 7 innings in a game. And I think a large part of that was and we've talked about this a couple times, but he was a two-dimensional pitcher. He had his fastball changeup combination. And this year, the slider has been on, the curveball has been on. He's worked really hard developing both of those pitches. And in order to get through a lineup 3 times unscathed, you really need to be able to give hitters different looks. You need to be able to change pitch sequences. Credit to Pedro Severino for calling a really good game. Yeah, he just did a phenomenal job of keeping people off balance. On top of that, his stuff just looks really good this year. If you check out the Baseball Savant page, John Means' changeup is actually the number 2 pitch in baseball in terms of run value, only behind Trevor Bauer's four-seam, Bauer of the Cy Young Award last year. So, he's throwing at a really, really elite level right now. And the no-hitter is the big flashy sign over the top of this performance, but He's been doing it all year, as we've been talking about. This is hardly a breakout. This is just the culmination of what has been a couple good months of really, really impressive pitching.
Yeah, and you said it there. It is a no-hitter. It'll go down as a no-hitter. It was not a perfect game, but it's the only no-hitter of its kind in Major League Baseball where he didn't walk anybody, he didn't hit anybody, no runners made it onto the bases via an error. The only runner got on because of a dropped third strike, and he was then thrown out on the bases trying to steal. So he only faced 27 batters. So it's a totally unique event in Major League history. But Jesse, I don't know, what did you see that makes this so special, and is this something you were kind of expecting from Means?
Well, I mean, it definitely wasn't on my radar. I wasn't thinking about, Means has looked so good that he could throw a no-hitter. But definitely in hindsight, he's been dominant enough where if we had been thinking about it, this should have been something that we had entertained as possible. And it's clear that exactly like Eli was saying, it goes to show just how much he has leveled up his game, particularly this season, but last season too, taking some steps forward, some strides forward, continuing to develop his more secondary pitches. Absolutely incredible start. How he made it look so effortless. He was just attacking the strike zone. I think he threw first pitch strikes to all except one hitter in the game.
Exactly right.
So, yep. I mean, that is remarkable. Just the amount of focus that requires to be able to do that. I mean, there's so many times pitchers get comfortable and they just let one go. And, that didn't happen at all in the game. He was very precise, pitched an excellent game, and it just goes to show kind of exactly how his game has developed in the recent months.
Yeah, I saw a tweet. Somebody, I don't know who tweeted it out, but they were looking back at old Orioles, like top 30 prospect lists on MLB Pipeline. And I think Means topped out at like the 28th best prospect in the Orioles system, prior to coming up. And everybody knows the story now. A couple years ago in 2018, Means was like thinking about quitting baseball. He made a LinkedIn page. He was really going, I don't know what career he was going for, but he was kind of done with baseball. His dad apparently talked him out of it and convinced him to give it another go. His dad passed away last year, and then now this year he throws a no-hitter. And the sky is the limit for John Means right now. It's been incredible. He's got good velocity. He's got a riding fastball. That changeup, as Eli said, is absolutely elite, one of the best pitches in baseball. And this is now like 12 or 13. This, the no-hitter is the best one yet, but this is like 12 or 13 incredible starts for John Means in a row. He has like a 1.5 ERA over his last baker's dozen worth of starts. I mean, that's not fluky. That's not like he's legitimately one of the best pitchers in baseball right now. Can you argue with that statement?
Yeah, there's no way to argue with it. I don't think that anybody ever saw this coming, kind of like you said. You see all these articles about how he's been overlooked, how he's been XYZ. I mean, he has been even to Orioles fans. Like I pride myself on taking good looks at pitchers and determining who I think will be successful. He was never on the list. Obviously he got in the shop with Chris Holt. They developed that changeup over the 2018-2019 offseason. It became one hell of a weapon, and I thought he was kind of a one-trick pony and had his phenomenal year. And then when he started struggling at the beginning of last year, I kind of was like, right. They're going to figure out a two-pitch combination. And they did, and then he added 2 more pitches. So just all the credit in the world to him. He's becoming a truly, truly like dominant force. I think it's pretty hard to argue that he is, on a performance right now level, one of the top 10 pitchers in all of baseball. It's extremely difficult to argue he's not. He's got to add a little bit of a resume before he gets into that conversation on the whole. But he's there right now. He's doing it and doing it well.
Even just a few weeks ago, I think we were generally talking about him as a potential 2 or 3 starter in a good rotation. And there's still a lot of evidence that over time he will probably be more of a 2 than an ace in a lineup or in a rotation, just because like Eli was saying earlier, the fact that he had never gone more than 7 innings is kind of something that you would not expect out of an ace. But maybe he has changed and maybe he is ready to sustain this level. Maybe not this level, but a little below this. Maybe he is ready to be an ace in a rotation, but I think that is still we still have to see about that. But he definitely can be a 2 and easily a 3 in any rotation at this point.
Right. Well, let's talk about what his future kind of looks like, because we did touch on it a couple weeks ago. It's gotten brought up naturally again this last day or two because he's gotten to this level where the Orioles aren't quite ready to win yet, but he is the type of pitcher that right now any team in the league would want in the rotation. And if he's not your ace, he's probably your number 2 regardless. So, let's lay it out. He's got 3 additional years of team control following 2021. The Orioles probably aren't going to be good this year, probably won't be good next year, but could be good in that third or that second and third year of Means' team control. What do the Orioles do with Means? Does it make sense to shop him around right now, shop him around in the offseason, talk to him about a contract extension? Jesse, if you had to make a decision, if you're Mike Elias and you have to make a decision over the next 6 months of what to do with John Means, where are you leaning?
Yeah, I'm even more compelled to basically, I know this is going to be heartbreaking, but basically to trade him as soon as possible.
Wow.
Now, obviously, there's no pressure on the Orioles to do that, and obviously wait for the right exact offer that we're looking for. But right now, his value is sky high. And at this point, there's only really one direction it can go, down. And I think there is probably going to be more value as from the Orioles' perspective. There's going to be more value in trading him than keeping him around. He is a left-handed pitcher. He is a little older for a left-handed pitcher. So there could always be concerns about health or something like that a little down the road. So I think maybe not at the trade deadline, but most likely I would say at the end of the year. But I definitely think at this point the Orioles should be thinking about shopping him, just because, as we were kind of talking about a few weeks ago, the timeline just doesn't quite add up from the Orioles' perspective. And the Orioles would get we would get a ton of future really good pieces probably in any deal that we were to execute trading him now. So I definitely think that just because of where he's at right now, because he has been so dominant, because he does look like an ace right now, the Orioles should definitely be entertaining this idea.
Now, could Eli, I'll get your take in just a second, but now could your opinion, Jesse, be changed if, during the minor league season, you see Adley Rutschman tearing up Double-A, you see DL Hall, Grayson Rodriguez are on the fast track for the big leagues, and then you're going to be able to pair all these guys together sometime next year, and, the Orioles have a good shot at 85, 90 wins. Would that, that's extrapolating a bit, but if you see a minor league season develop where the Orioles prospects are all on the upward trajectory, could you say, all right, maybe we'll hang on to Means and see what we do these next 3 seasons? Is that possible?
I think it's unlikely, just because very good Double-A seasons don't necessarily translate to good major league seasons, for one. And it's just a big risk to assume that these guys are going to be ready to perform and ready to be great in their first season in the major leagues when they come up. So I'd be very cautious about that. I'd be very cautious about making those kind of judgments based on even their Double-A performances.
Okay, Eli, I'll go to you now for kind of what you think the O's should do with Means.
It's interesting Jesse says he'd be cautious, because that is, in my eyes, whether the Orioles trade John Means at the deadline or at the end of the season is entirely dependent on where they see that minor league system. To me, if the Orioles think that we can field a competitive team in maybe 4 years, then I think they try to extend John Means. At that point, he's 32 years old. He's probably on the back end of his prime, unless he pulls a Jacob deGrom and adds 5 miles an hour over the next couple of years. But he's probably at the back end of his prime, probably is still a pretty valuable pitcher and can help stabilize the rotation of the DL Halls and Grayson Rodriguez's. I think that if the Orioles, for whatever reason, think that we're still missing a future piece or two, that they don't have confidence in getting from the free agent market, that they don't have confidence in acquiring some other way, I think it becomes a situation where John Means gets traded, and that really sucks. But these are the kinds of decisions that the front office has to make in such a way that they remain neutral, remain unbiased, and they have to make the tough decisions. Thankfully, I'm not going to be the one making it. But John Means, his value right now, as Jesse said, is probably about as high as it will ever be if he continues this through up to the trade deadline. We were talking in the Birdland Tonight little group chat a little bit, and somebody brought up the Blake Snell trade as a comparison. Snell, a former Cy Young winner, had 3 years and I think it was $39 million left on his contract. They were talking about how that was a underwhelming return, but even with it being a somewhat underwhelming return for him, they still netted Luis Patino, who is, a top 30 prospect in all of baseball, throws 100 miles an hour with a wipeout slider. So it's impossible to argue that there will be no value in a John Means trade. We will get some very, very legitimate blue chip prospect ready to almost plug and play into a major league lineup. That being said, John Means' story, the obvious, dedication to his craft, the progression from absolutely a no-name prospect to a frontline starter in the MLB, I want him around. I love the dude, and if he stays in black and orange for the rest of his life, I will not complain.
The one thing I just want to add to that is, just for reference, I think it'd be useful if Means' value at the deadline or at the end of the year stays consistent and it doesn't drop from roughly where it is right now. We're looking at a Manny Machado type return, if not more than what we got from Machado.
I'd say more.
Yeah, I would think more because you have them several years.
I'd say significantly more. Yeah.
Right.
3 years.
Right. So, so just for reference, I think that's important to keep in mind kind of what the Orioles would be getting back for Means in this situation.
From that trade, just to recap, I mean, we got Dean Kramer, who is a starting rotation option right now. We got Yusniel Diaz, who is, if we didn't have so many interesting guys at the major league level already, he'd probably be in the bigs as a corner outfielder. We got some pieces from that deal for sure.
So when I wrote for Camden Chat a couple weeks ago about kind of what Means' future holds, this was obviously before he threw the no-hitter, but I compared what a potential return would be to what Joe Musgrove went for from the Pirates to the Padres. Now Musgrove threw a no-hitter earlier this season. He's 28 years old. He's, I think, 3 months older than Means and has one fewer year of team control remaining. But the Pirates ended up getting 4 minor leaguers plus big league reliever David Bednar in return. And the best of the prospects they got was a teenage outfielder named Hudson Head, who not a top 100 guy, but is a decent outfield prospect now in the Pirates system, I think. So that wouldn't blow me away. So if they got offered something similar to that, I'm not interested, although I think Means has at this point elevated himself above where Joe Musgrove is. But those two do have some similarities as far as where they are in their careers right now. My thing with the whole situation is when you're trading a John Means, you're hoping, if John Means is this good, actually, maybe not this good, but a 3 ERA guy, sub 3 ERA guy, you're hoping the trade that you get back has a John Means in it, essentially. You're hoping you get an ace back, and then you're hoping to get something else too. I don't think the Orioles drafted Adley Rutschman and Hudson Kjerstad, 2 college bats, if they didn't think they were going to be competitive in the next 3 years. You don't draft college hitters, college pitchers, if you don't think you're going to get somewhat competitive soon. So I don't think he gets traded this year at all. I think getting traded during the season is off the table. I don't see that happening. Maybe in the offseason if the Orioles aren't happy with their minor league development, but right now I'm more leaning towards talk to him about an extension, see what he wants. You're going to be buying out 3 years of arbitration, so you're not going to be paying $25 million a year for those first 3 years. Then you're going to be talking about another 2 years, 3 years maybe, where then you're going to be thinking about $25 million a year. So I don't think the money is going to be as crazy as, if he was a 28-year-old free agent pitcher who then wants $300 million. So I don't think the money's as wild as some people would think would be for a guy like this. And I'm not convinced that the trade return is worth what you'd be giving up in what is maybe the first ace that the Orioles have had since Mike Mussina left 20 years ago. So that's where I'm at. That can definitely change and fluctuate as the season goes, of course.
Yeah, and to acknowledge kind of what you're saying, there is a symbolic point to it too, right? Is that you kind of want to keep this guy around. You definitely want to have a guy like John Means that the Orioles really cultivated and found his talent in a sense. This is the sort of like Trey Mancini. This is the kind of guy that you want to keep on your team, and trading him would definitely be, one of the more just business oriented decisions that an organization can make, but they're decisions organizations make all the time.
Well, and that's a whole other element is about if he's a development piece, like maybe the Orioles are turning into like a pitching factory. I don't know. And maybe they're going to there's more John Meanses out there, but I'm not convinced of that just yet.
Yeah. Tyler, to your point about the college bats though, I mean, you say if you're not anticipating within 2-3 years, but I don't fully buy into that because players really hit their prime when they're probably 26 or so. Mm-hmm. And I don't know, 26 to 28 is usually where it is. So those guys still have a good 4 years until they hit that point. And I definitely, I think you can draft a college bat and expect him to be up in 2 years or so, but expect him to really hit his stride in 4. And from that point, that's when you expect to compete. That's kind of the timeline I look at. So, John Means with 3 years of control left after this, it doesn't perfectly line up. It's very close. And like I said, I think John Means as a 32-year-old will still be a productive pitcher. And I think, it would be worth keeping around. But I think it's kind of contingent on whether those guys are progressing on that 4-year track, so to speak. Again, I want the guy around. I don't want to be the one who's saying, get rid of him, But I think there's a good chance that some contender this year will take a look around and say, all right, we need a bottom tier team with a top level pitcher that we can pry somebody away from to get us through the finish line here. And John Means fits that category. And there could be some really, really hot competition for him that could drive his price way, way up. If the likes of, the Yankees pitching is always a problem. If the likes of the Yankees, the Red Sox pitching is always a problem. Like, I'd hate to trade him within the division even more.
Yeah, that gets dicey.
Right. But, and I would be one of the fans screaming Bloody Mary, calling for Elias's head if they did that. But it might still be the right move, especially if there's a bit of an auction block for him.
And we did trade Britton to the Yankees.
Yeah, I mean, a closer in the last year of team control. Yeah, it is different. No, I mean, I think Mike Elias should definitely listen to offers. There's no harm in doing your due diligence. And if they ultimately trade him, I'll certainly trust Elias at the time. But Mike Elias will also be staking a lot of his reputation on that trade.
For
because
sure.
You deal an ace from a rebuilding team. There's a lot there. And it worked out for Andy McPhail. Well, it didn't really work out for Andy McPhail because he was gone before the Orioles were good. But they got two important pieces for a long time in the Adam Jones, Eric Bedard, Chris Tillman trade. So we shall see. I'm on the fence. I'm on the side of extension right now. You two are on the side of trade, and I totally understand that. And
I'm not sure I'm on the side of trade. I want to correct that. I feel like I need to play devil's advocate because nobody wants to say he should be traded. But I think in the grand scheme of things, I am team extension.
Jesse's like,
I basically said that. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't want to get my hopes up for an extension, and I don't want to be disappointed if they trade him. And so I'm looking at all the reasons they could trade him, and it seems plausible in my mind. I don't want that to happen though. I want him to be an Oriole for life.
Yeah. All right. Well, we're going to bask in the no-hit sun for a little while because I don't think John Means is going to be traded at least for a month or two. So let's enjoy a few more John Means starts. But let's stick on the trade train because I also wrote for Camden Chat this past week about who the Orioles' most obvious trade candidate will be. The Orioles, as we've said, probably not going to be competing for the pennant this year, likely to be sellers at the deadline. So who are they going to sell? I made the argument in the article that Matt Harvey is the most obvious trade candidate on the roster. So let's just start there. Jesse, do you agree that Matt Harvey is the most obvious? You don't have to extrapolate, but do you agree with that statement?
That it's complicated, but I would be inclined to say yes at this point.
Okay. And Eli, do you feel the same way?
Absolute definite yes.
Okay. So all three of us are in agreement there. Then if Jesse, I guess I'll go back to you since it's complicated. So who are you waffling between Matt Harvey and who would be like the most obvious guy to get dealt this summer?
Right. So I think it would be one of these guys that their contract is up at the end of the year. So the one guy that I probably would be inclined to think about is Galvis. Now, we were talking just a little while ago about how thin the Orioles infield depth is, and trading Freddie Galvis at this point would be a big hit to our infield. With that said, I think that Freddie Galvis, there are probably a lot of teams that could use him. Maybe a guy gets injured, their starting shortstop gets injured. They kind of need a short-term, solid replacement that they can rely on to play throughout the rest of the year. So the one thing I would say is that I think in order for something like this to happen, the Orioles are going to have a plan for who's going to take over at shortstop if he were to be traded, whether it's Richie Martin, who makes a lot of progress and they think he's ready. I hope they don't, but whether they stick Valleca over there and just decide we're going to suck it up, something along these lines. So the Orioles are going to have to kind of create a plan, and I think they're not really prepared at this moment to trade Galvis, but I can see him being a desirable piece at some point, particularly if there is an injury. Maybe if by the time of the deadline, there's starting shortstop somewhere is going to be out for a month or month and a half, something like that. And they need someone to come in, play every day, and then maybe be a backup when their starter returns. So I can definitely see a scenario like that where if Galvis were to get dealt, it would just be a matter of the Orioles saying, okay, this is the deal that makes sense for us. We are going to patch together shortstop and make it through the season without being pitiful over at the shortstop position. And the team is willing to offer us something good enough where the Orioles are willing to make that exchange.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense that, an expiring contract would be one to go. My thing with Galvis is nobody else really wanted him prior to the season. He's making $1 million, $1.5 million. That's not typically what a team pays a shortstop that they think can contribute. So I'm not so sure. Any team could have had him this offseason for nothing. Why would you trade prospects for him now? But Eli, I'll go to you for maybe your take on Galvis, but also maybe why you do think Matt Harvey is the most easily or most obvious trade candidate on this roster.
I think I'm kind of with you, Tyler, on Galvis. I think Jesse's point about somebody getting hurt, is a potential just because Galvis does play every day. But that being said, Jesse said this too, to his credit. I don't think we'd get anything valuable back, and I don't think it would be worth piecing things together at the end of the season. I think it's worth keeping the stability there. And, I mean, there's not going to be a bidding war for Freddie Galvis. So, yeah, I'm on the team of Matt Harvey. I definitely think that pretty much unequivocally starting pitching is what is most valuable at the deadline. You have 5 starting pitchers that can get hurt as opposed to 1 shortstop. So chances are you have somebody struggling with an injury throughout the season. Chances are your number 5 just isn't doing that great. Something like that is much more plausible. And Matt Harvey has been okay. And if you can give somebody okay to just round out a rotation, give that bullpen an extra inning of rest every week, that's really valuable. And so I think that Matt Harvey will go. I think it's almost impossible to argue that he's going to be around all year. Moving to somebody else, I think that Michael Franco is probably the next guy up. I think that he doesn't necessarily have an impact bat, but he has a bat that can play in most lineups when he's performing. We talked about the 106 WRC plus last year. That's solid. You can plug that bat into pretty much any lineup and have some success with it. He's on a pretty cheap contract, and the Orioles do have some corner depth that, we could just throw Rio Ruiz back in there and not really be any worse off for it.
The thing about that I would say is that, well, as far as Harvey, the one thing that would make him not a trade candidate would be him getting injured. That's basically, like Eli's saying, the only thing I could see getting in the way of the Orioles dealing him. But as far as Franco, I mean, the thing about Franco is I feel like only a contender would really be trading for Franco. And kind of wonder whether Franco is up to par for what a contender would be looking for in a starting third baseman. And he doesn't seem like a guy that is going to be a backup or a utility guy. So I just kind of have a little difficulty seeing Franco being of strong interest to a contender.
The thing that I'll say about that is usually you aren't at the deadline trading out of desire. You know what I mean? Like usually, usually if you're a contender, you're trading out of need. You know, this is a hole here and we need to plug somebody in. And somebody who is 6% better than, you know, the league average hitter is a pretty, that I wouldn't say like appetizing per se, but a pretty like, you know, it's acceptable to give up something to plug somebody in who's 6% better than league average, if he is living up to that by the time we get there.
Yeah, I'll say what's kind of interesting about the discussion is, one, usually the most easily movable piece on a roster is like a bullpen guy, just because every team needs a reliever, but the Orioles don't really have any relievers that you would obviously move. Like Cesar Valdez is like, oh, he's a 36-year-old, you could move him, but he's only got like 1 year of big league time.
Right.
So he's got a ton of team control left, so the Orioles might as well keep him. Sean Armstrong would probably be like the most obvious guy, like service time wise, but his ERA is like 11. So I could see Sean Armstrong going if he like gets it together a little bit and can have like a 4 ERA and be like a serviceable middle relief pitcher. That'd be easy enough to like deal. But what I'm kind of surprised we haven't talked about is Trey Mancini, because there is sort of a not a problem at first base, but Ryan Mountcastle's had issues in the outfield. The Orioles clearly want his bat in the lineup. I think he's too young of a guy to be a full-time DH, and I think he's shown that he can play a serviceable first base. While Trey Mancini is, you know, a really good hitter, professional hitter, long track record. I think he seems to have gotten over his early season funk a little bit. He's starting to hit the ball pretty hard and with some authority, and has an additional year of team control left. But that's kind of a nice little package to get dealt to a team, or that a team would want. Is, you know, we got this guy for the playoff push. We've also got him next year to be our starting first baseman, DH, kind of, you know, because I think by next year, every team will have the DH. I think the NL teams will have DH, all that stuff. So what do you guys think the odds are of Mancini going at the deadline? Eli, what do you think?
I think that his odds are hurt by the fact, and as terrible as this is, by the fact that he missed all of last season. I think that teams are going to look at him and see somebody who will probably fatigue towards the end of the year, just because of the zero workload. And, you know, beyond even just he wasn't playing baseball, he probably wasn't working out, you know, he probably wasn't running as much.
Couldn't work out, yeah.
Right. So his body, to an extent, is still healing, is still getting back up to full strength. And I think that these 162-game seasons are extremely brutal. You know, people always talk about baseball being a war of attrition. And I think the teams will be a little bit hesitant because of that. I think that if Trey Mancini becomes who he was in 2019 and performs at that level all year, then I think he's a name popping up in trade rumors all over throughout the offseason.
Jesse, you have anything to add there?
No, I think what he's saying makes a lot of sense. The one other thing I would say is he's a little bit inflexible to have as a guy, kind of like the Orioles are experiencing right now with him. He's somebody that you have to know you are going to utilize at first base. You probably don't want him in left field. So you need him either to be a first base or DH type. And the question, kind of like Eli is saying, is the bat going to hold up next year? He's getting a little better hitting, but he started off the year really struggling with the bat. So the question is the bat going to be having sufficient production for a first baseman? And can we rely on that and know that he is going to produce if we put him in the lineup every day at first base? And I think that there are a lot of questions maybe that he has to answer either this year or up to the deadline before he gets dealt. But if he can really hit and if he can really show himself, I think it gets more possible. I just think a lot of teams are going to have a lot of question marks about that. And when they're trading for a guy like Trey Mancini, they need to be sure that he can be reliably their first baseman every day and hit them 30 or 35 home runs.
Fair enough. Trade stuff's going to be going on for the rest of the year, or 3 more months. We'll definitely keep tabs on it. So let's get away from the trade stuff and talk about something that's back in our lives for the first time in like 18 months. Minor League Baseball is back. For those who weren't paying attention, the Frederick Keys are no longer an Orioles affiliate. They have been replaced basically by the Aberdeen Ironbirds, who moved up from short season A, which no longer exists. So the Ironbirds are now the Orioles Advanced A affiliate. Everything else is the same: AAA Norfolk, AA Bowie, and then Low A Delmarva. So guys, with that said, we've seen the rosters, or at least I've provided you a link to the rosters of each of the minor league teams. Is there one roster in particular? Obviously, these are going to shift around as the year goes, but sitting here on May 6th, is there one roster in particular that you are especially intrigued by?
I mean, I think we all have to be intrigued by the roster that has Adley Rutschman on it. So It's probably going to be AA, the Bowie team. But yeah, I mean, of course, it'll be really fascinating to watch Adley Rutschman play. They also have DL Hall, which is, really exciting to watch and to see how he progresses this year. So if I had to say one, I would definitely say AA.
They got Kyle Bradish too, who the Orioles player development guys are like very excited about. Eli, are you on the Bowie train, or somebody else you're hyping up?
Yeah, you come to podcasts for hot takes, but I do not have a hot take here. I mean, seeing DL Hall come out and strike out 10 dudes in 4 1/3 in his first start, it's impossible to not look at that and Rutschman and see that AA is kind of where the future really is. We have a lot of depth at AAA. We've been talking about the pitching depth that the Orioles have at AAA, and that'll be fun to watch for that sake. But when you look at the upside of the Orioles farm system, it lives at AA, and that's the front of the wave, so to speak. And it's impossible to ignore that. That's exciting.
For sure. There's a lot to like in Bowie. If I were to pick sort of like a runner-up, I would say Delmarva, just because the infield there is very –
I agree.
Yeah, I mean, you've got legitimate prospects in Gunnar Henderson, Darrell Hernandez, Anthony Servideo, and Jordan Westberg all in the infield. It seems like what they're doing is basically having Westberg and Henderson kind of man short and third base, and Servideo is kind of playing a little second base, where they're all natural shortstops. So that's pretty cool. And then Hudson Haskins also in the outfield, who was a draft pick out of Tulane just last year. So a lot to like. They're not as much pitching in Delmarva, but yeah, I'm just excited that minor league baseball is back and that Aberdeen is in Advanced A now, because Aberdeen's probably like the closest to Baltimore affiliate, and it's a really cool stadium. So I'm excited about that as well. Go ahead.
I was just going to kind of confirm your point that, I mean, AAA, like most AAA teams, has all the kind of the depth of the major league roster. It's kind of more veterans and older guys. And, there's Fernando Abad there. There's Josh Rogers there. Evan Phillips is there. And Austin Wynns. So
sounds very boring so far.
Yeah, right.
Jesse locked in on nobody.
That's what I'm trying to point out, is that's why the AAA roster is not nearly as exciting as AA, for instance. So
I mean,
they do have
there's also Keegan Aiken, and Zach Lothar,
right. And Diaz.
There are plenty of exciting guys there.
Right.
Alex Wells,
right.
Bannon, Jones, Martin, McCoy. Yeah. These are all dudes who are pretty close to the MLB level,
for sure.
Yeah, AAA's got its own flavor. Those are guys that are going to be in the big leagues probably this year or very soon after. But if there's like one, maybe, we've talked about in the past, the non-top 100 players we're interested in this year. But if there was like a player or maybe even a storyline throughout the minor leagues, the Orioles minor league system, that you're going to be paying the most attention to this summer, what would that be? Jesse, you seem eager to answer the question.
I mean, I guess the only thing I would say about that is Rutschman and the pitching, and that's basically it. I mean, that is what the Orioles are relying upon for the future. That's really what the Orioles need to come through in the minor league system more than probably anything else at this point. Of course, there are some key position players that we need to produce, of course, but overall, the bulk of our prospects are pitchers, and that's definitely what the Orioles and Oriole fans should be paying attention to.
Okay. Eli, anything different from you?
Yeah, I'm along the same lines. I'll take it a little more specifically, though. I think that this is the first year that DL Hall and Grayson Rodriguez are A, established prospects, and B, old enough to really progress through a system. Mm-hmm. In previous years, they were in 2020 not playing minor league baseball, or in 2019, both still pretty young guys. I think that this year is the year that we can really see like the pitching pipeline, as we always talk about. We can see that really start flowing. And I think, seeing Rodriguez start in high A, that was good to see for me. And I didn't actually expect DL Hall to start in double A either. I expected him to start in high A. So seeing both of those guys, seeing what they can do over a full season, I'm really, really excited for.
Yeah, and they both have already pitched and were really, really good. DL Hall is striking out everybody and also looks like a complete dirtbag, but like in a good way, dude, if that makes sense.
He grew that hair out so long. It looks good.
Yeah, and I
support it.
What I'll be looking for is just how minor league managers and I guess their big league organizations sort of manage the playing time of these young guys, because didn't play it all last year. I mean, they obviously played games. They played in the fall and stuff, but how they sort of manage these guys that don't have a full season in their back pocket. And we're already seeing that. Like, I think DL Hall only threw 4 2/3 innings, even though he was cruising. Right. They're not going to throw 120 pitches. So just keep an eye on that as well. Kind of staying on the youth train, let's talk about some more pitching. So the Orioles a couple of weeks ago had demoted Dean Kramer. He wasn't pitching particularly well, but he wasn't demoted for performance. It was more of a load management type of situation. They've now done something similar to Bruce Zimmerman, although, again, he's had a couple rough starts in a row, but again, just demoted for load management. They've got off days. They don't need a fifth starter at the moment, et cetera, et cetera. So what do you guys think about this sort of approach to the Orioles kind of not coddling, but sort of looking out for and taking care of their young pitchers? Eli, I'll probably go to you first. Are you kind of in favor of this solution to kind of what we just talked about with a lost season last year or a shortened season? What do you think about this approach the Orioles are taking?
Yeah, I fully agree with it. I think that when you look at the health of a pitching staff as a whole, if you go out there and you say, these are our 5 guys, and you try to just ram them through the season and expect them to be able to go from, 70 innings that they threw last year to 160 or so, you're just inviting problems. You're inviting injuries. And while these guys are still developing to an extent, I see no reason to really push them that hard. And I think it also serves as a little bit of a mental break for Kramer and Zimmerman, because they were struggling a little bit. Give them a moment to reset, give them a moment to get their body right, give them a moment to get their mind right, and bring them back up when they're ready. Simple as that.
Jess, do you see any downsides to this approach?
No, not exactly. The only possible thing is something we talked about last week, is just with the consistency and letting them stay in their routine and their flow. But we see, Kramer had a good start against Seattle, 6 innings, 1 run, just one solo shot that was hit off him. So it seems like it was a good plan for Kramer, at least so far. But no, in terms of the consistency part, I don't even think that's a big issue. Exactly like Eli was saying, you need to find spots throughout the course of a season where you can give pitchers a break, right? And this is the Orioles taking advantage and finding a spot in their schedule where they're able to do that. We might see this a little more coming up because, as you were talking about to us, Tyler, the Orioles have a bunch of Thursdays off coming up in a row. We might see a little bit more of this. These pitchers have options, of course, at this point in their career. So the Orioles are taking advantage of them. As long as it doesn't get wildly inconsistent and sporadic, where they're up and down and up and down and up and down. If they do it every once in a while, once every couple months, something along those lines, I think there's no real problem with that. Something
else that's kind of worth considering as part of this whole situation is I believe the 5-man travel squad is going to be a thing for the entire year, because I think AAA rosters are like 30 or 31 guys this year because it accounts for those 5-man travel squads. So there's a chance that these guys get demoted and they are still with the team, with the Orioles the entire time, because they'll technically be with AAA, but they'll also technically be with the Orioles. So I think, you'll see I think Dean Kramer went down and through like a 3-inning appearance in the alternate site or whatever. I think you'll see a lot of that type of stuff where they'll be down, but not really down for very long, and they'll just bounce back after a week or two. Now, of course, when you get demoted, you do have to stay down for 10 days unless there's an injury, but there can be some funny business there as well. So good stuff. Okay, let's talk about the second base situation. We've touched on this in the past, but it's kind of continuing to be a problem. The Orioles, as we've said, aren't necessarily the best team in the world, but you need to have a competent player at each position on your roster. And I think you could make the argument right now that they do not currently have a competent second baseman on the roster. Ramon Urias and Rio Ruiz have shared the responsibility. Both of them have been OPS under 600. Urias at 527, Ruiz at 576. Pat Valleca, on the other hand, has come on recently, 7 for 19 over the last 7 games. And Jahmai Jones just went 3 for 4 with 2 triples and a home run in Norfolk on Wednesday. So what are the Orioles to do about the second base job? Should they stick with what's going on? Should they give it to Valleca? Should they check in on Jones? Eli, what are your thoughts on what the Orioles should do with this second base issue?
It's kind of funny. We had this discussion when Yolmer Sanchez was let go, and we all said, oh, yeah, just give it to Pat Valleca. It makes the most sense. And here we are again. I don't really know how it happened. We all laughed at Rio Ruiz moving over there, and we all gave him his props when he made a couple nice defensive plays. But here we are, and Rio Ruiz is still Rio Ruiz. And yeah, Urias is he's still developing, of course, but he clearly is not at the point where he's an everyday major league player. I'm for Valleca. I think we know what we have with him. We know he's got a little bit of pop. Throw him back in there. Just let things stabilize. I'm all for leaving Jahmai Jones down for another month or so, but I definitely expect to see him in the infield mix by the time the trade deadline rolls around.
Okay, now before we started, or Jesse, you might have said it earlier in the show. I'm not sure. You said you're ready to see Jahmai Jones. So are you saying Jahmai Jones come up tomorrow?
I'm in complete agreement with what Eli was saying. Yeah, I didn't say it on the show. Okay. I said it before the show, but I am ready to see him. No, but yeah, I think it needs to take a month or a month and a half. Let him prove himself down in the minors. He didn't play any minor league baseball last year. I think it'd be good for him to kind of get into a little bit of a routine and then get promoted. So yeah, definitely not tomorrow. Again, it's more about the prospect than it is about filling the immediate need for the Orioles, right? It's more about what is good for Jahmai Jones rather than what is good for the Orioles winning more games at this point. So if he needs a month, which I think would be good, give him a month down in the minors, but then, bring him up. It's at a point where I don't think we really there's not much more we really need to see between Ruiz and probably Urias at this point. He hasn't had a lot of time really to prove himself, but he definitely hasn't seized the opportunity. And we have a really exciting prospect in the minors that we're excited to see. And I think soon it'll be time to give him an opportunity.
Going back to Valleca for a second, I think, he struggled early in the year with the Orioles, but I think the reason for that is exactly what we saw last year, where he really succeeded when he got to play every single day. I think he's just one of those guys that needs to be in the lineup 6 days a week, 5 days a week to really get a feel for what's going on. And he doesn't really succeed. He's fine bouncing around the infield or the outfield or wherever, but he needs to get regular at bats. He can't be a bench guy that just comes on to pinch hit or sporadically. So I would rather see Valleca every day, obviously. And, if the Orioles can make the roster work right now with Valleca, Urias, and Ruiz on there, sure, go for it. I don't see the downside to it. But I think at some point, there's going to be a pitching crunch or something that you're not going to be able to have all three of them on the roster at the same time. And once that time comes, I don't think it should be Valleca that makes way. I would rather it be Urias or Ruiz or whoever. And yeah, I agree with you guys on Jahmai Jones. Let's see what he can do in AAA for a month or two.
Well, the other thing about having the three guys on the roster is, they're so inflexible in their defensive abilities. Ruiz plays third a little bit, and Urias can move around the infield a bit, but
I think Valleca can play the corner outfield spot.
Yeah,
at least
that's
left
true,
field a little
but
bit.
I mean, he's not good
I think
defensively. I mean, that's the thing. So
no.
But they are flexible. They're not good, but they are flexible.
Okay.
It's not like a Trumbo, the crunch where they had Trumbo and everybody they played first base and DH. So it's a little bit better. So last week, we always do guess that Oriole, and last week the 3 hints were a left-handed middle relief pitcher with the Orioles from 2000 through 2004. Number 2 was after being DFA'd by the Yankees in 2005. The New York Post reported that he wasn't one of Joe's boys, quote unquote, referring to Joe Torre. And the 3rd was he holds the major league record for most games pitched without recording a plate appearance. I only just tweeted that out from the Warehouse Pod Twitter earlier today. So I don't think we had any responses, but
Brady still got it.
Brady DM'd us on Instagram.
He was really excited about the shout out last week, so I figured we'd throw him another.
Brady, number 2. We need more people to respond. Brady, you're the best. We appreciate you very much. So yeah, keep doing that and we'll keep shouting you out. But the answer was Buddy Groom. Did I say that already? I'm not sure. But the correct response was Buddy Groom, mustachioed left-handed relief pitcher. It was kind of a guy of our childhood. Jesse, I feel like you said you had not even thought about Buddy Groom until we brought it up last week.
No, that was me. I knew the name, and if you would have said who was Buddy Groom, I could tell you, but there was never an occasion for Buddy Groom to pop into my mind. No.
Buddy Groom is a guy that I think about on occasion fairly regularly, actually.
I do
just
too.
because he was like a bullpen guy from our childhood that when I first started paying attention to the Orioles, he was there. And I think that he'll always be there.
I think his name too is kind of like
That's
memorable. True. Like it kind of sticks in your head a little bit too.
That can't be his actual name though, right?
Right.
I don't. I need to confirm this. Buddy Groom.
It's
actual
nice.
Name.
It's nice to think that you guys just have these quiet moments and you kind of look off into space and you say, "Yeah, Buddy Groom."
That's
how
I
pictured that.
You will never guess what his actual first name is.
Frederick?
Wow.
No.
I'm seeing it too.
It's Wedsel.
What?
Wedsel Gary Buddy Groom Jr.
How do you WEDSEL? What is that?
Yep.
Yeah.
It's like a Hansel and Gretel type of situation, I think. It's like a fairy tale name.
Yeah.
It's not a really. I'd go by Buddy too. Although I might have just gone by Gary. Gary Groom. That kind of sounds like.
You could go to Wes. That makes sense.
That's true.
Yeah.
Yeah, Wedsel, Wes. Okay. Anyway, Buddy Groom.
It sounds like his parents might have just called him Buddy, because it was like in quotes, like, I don't know.
Right. Well, yeah, it's definitely a nickname. I mean, I call my son Buddy sometimes, but I wouldn't.
It's when they didn't want to say the name they actually gave him. So they said, "Come here, Buddy. Yeah, you."
I cannot believe we wrote that on the birth certificate. Wedsel. Shocker. All right. So this week we'll give you 3 new facts about a former Oriole. And then we will tweet it out, or you can just DM us on Instagram and tell us who it is, and that's cool too. So the first fact about this player is they played with the Orioles from 1999 through 2000.
They were a 4-time Gold Glove winner prior to their time coming to the Baltimore Orioles.
And they were traded 3 times in 1998, including twice on December 1st, the day he became an Oriole.
It's a little tougher because we didn't give a position this time.
We didn't.
Yeah. They're going to have to struggle with this.
Yeah, Jesse was guessing before the show, and he couldn't even get it.
Well, I got it on my second guess.
Well,
it was the second try.
But I did give you the position of the person. So that made it
right.
That helps.
Right.
That helps.
It helped a lot, yeah.
It did. But okay, so those go ahead, Eli.
I think after this, we have spent a lot of time hitting the late 90s, early 2000s hard, and I think that was like nostalgia on our parts.
Yeah.
We should expand because there are like 50 more years of Orioles baseball that we haven't even touched.
Right.
I think we'll just have to get like more, more mainstream, I think. If we go to like the 70s or something, you're not going to be able to pick like a middle relief pitcher that tossed like 50 innings one year.
I actually might be able to, because let me throw this out. This is a bonus round for you guys. There was an Orioles left-handed reliever who is still the only person in Major League history to pick off 3 runners in one inning.
Well, I know that one.
I know.
Yes.
Well, okay. No, it's for the fans.
Okay.
We don't have fans. We have listeners. We don't have fans.
we have friends.
Right. Acquaintances. Yeah, but you said middle reliever, and I was like, they might actually be able to get this.
Yeah, well, that one's a pretty easy one, I think, and I think he was with the Orioles for a long time.
Yeah, definitely.
So that one I think is pretty mainstream. I would put that in the mainstream bucket.
I agree. I have a picture with him.
Oh,
Fun
that's
fact.
cool.
Yeah,
I've heard good things that he was a good guy.
He is.
All right. So we always predict the upcoming week as well. Last week we were all wrong. Eli and I both said they'd go 3-3, and the Orioles actually went 4-2. So we were happy to be wrong.
That's great.
Two series wins. Jesse was way off. What did you say? Like 1-5 or something?
I don't think that bad, but
I think he said 2-4.
2-4. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, this coming week the Orioles are at home, and then they go back on the road for a brief amount of time. They've got 4 against the Red Sox at Camden Yards, which I'm so sick of playing the Red Sox. So I'd be happy to be done with them for a while.
I won't be sick if we beat them. I mean,
well, yeah. Well, both series have been sweeps so far, so
right.
I think that trend will change.
And they're playing well right now, unfortunately.
Yes, and then the Orioles go to Queens to play 2 against the Mets. So, thoughts, predictions? How are the Orioles going to fare this week? Jesse, you want to go?
Sure. I'm going to say we're going to go 4-2. I'm going to be more,
wow.
Whoa.
I'm going to be more optimistic.
John Means is only going to pitch once.
Yes, and we're going to go 4-2.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
That's bold.
We're the thing is we're coming off the John Means, excitement. So I think the Orioles are going to be a little rejuvenated and ready to play good baseball. No, but in addition to that, I mean, the Mets are okay, and the Red Sox, I think we're definitely capable of beating. So,
Red Sox are 19-13, top team in the AL East, and the Mets are 13-13. But that is good enough for second place in the NL East.
Right.
Okay.
So,
Eli, thoughts?
I'll pull a little reverse, and I'll say we're going to go 2-4. I think we take one from each.
Wow. Okay. And I'll go in the middle, 3-3. But I think we sweep the Mets, and we only win one of the games against the Red Sox.
I'm thinking we're going to sweep the Mets too.
Okay. Wow. Yeah, I'm not.
It gives you an indication we're going to sweep the Mets. I don't really get that.
Well, here's the thing: even if Jacob deGrom pitches, we'll probably still win like 1-0 because the Mets suck when he pitches.
Yeah.
It's incredible.
Well, I don't know. He usually gets an RBI or 2 when he throws, so.
That's true. That's true, and our pitchers will have to hit for 2 games, which will be weird. But that's what I'm going with. Okay, boys. What else? We don't have to really do anything else. We'll just tell people to subscribe to the podcast on Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. You can go over to Substack.com, thewarehousepod.substack.com, and you can join our email list, and you'll get the podcast sent right to your inbox. And you should also follow us on all the social media channels at The Warehouse Pod. Jesse, where can people follow you on social media?
People can follow me on Instagram and on Twitter at Juggernaut8678. They can also email the show at thewarehousepod@gmail.com.
It's also, we should say, we're recording this and it's progressively gotten darker. And
Jesse's,
he's literally in a cave. He's in a cave now.
Jesse has just faded away into oblivion throughout the course of this podcast.
We can barely see his face.
And a voice from the darkness. You can follow me on Instagram and Twitter.
I am the Juggernaut. Eli, what about you?
You can follow me on, what is it? Which one's which? On Instagram at Ginsey55 and on Twitter at Elijah Ginsberg.
Very good. And I am on both as well at _Ty Young, and go over to CamdenChat.com for Orioles blog content. And also check out the folks over at Birdland Tonight at Birdland Sports on all the different social media stuff. Check them out. They're doing good stuff. All right, guys. Well, next week we will talk about hopefully another John Means no-hitter, the Orioles sweeping both the Red Sox and the Mets, and hopefully no more trade rumors. Cool?
I like that.
All right. Well, this has been the Warehouse Podcast. Until next time, I'm Tyler.
I'm Jesse.
And I'm Eli.
Let's go O's.